Coming in hot, I'm your host and captain of the Reason to Reason podcast, Sal Galati. We're going to do something a little bit different. You're just going to get a taste, a dose of reason. Thanks for joining us again. Hope you've been enjoying the show and different things we've been doing, conversations we've been having. Today's topic is going to be unrestricted warfare. And we have this stuff going on with the tariffs with China. Obviously, if people haven't realized yet, the media is not terribly honest. So I'm going to give you just some stuff that I'm imagining a lot of you haven't heard about, and it's tragic, and that's why I want to talk to you about it. So what is unrestricted warfare? That is a book written by two Air Force colonels in the PLA. Came out, I want to say, around 1999, and it was a direct result of what the Chinese Communist Party and the military apparatus there saw as a deadly military force in the United States and Iraq. Highly efficient, combined arms, using all aspects of the military in a very coordinated fashion. They're like, we don't want to ever have to fight these people in that way. I think the terminology they use in the book, foreign devils. So they systematically came up with other ways to fight unrestricted warfare. So, you have the term kinetic warfare, that's bullets are flying. They don't want to get into bullets flying warfare, but they have actively been engaged in a military operation with our country for the last 25, 30 years, subversively. And we're going to go through the types, and this is strictly from their book, and then we're going to give you the examples that they're actually doing. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I think hopefully a smaller and smaller percentage of the population that is not understanding that is the situation. So when political leaders are disrupting the norms and they get bothered because it causes some turbulence, they don't understand the bigger threat downstream. I liken it to the prophets, honestly. The prophet is looking at a threat that no one in the present day who's distracted with their stuff is thinking about or worried about, and they think it's crazy, it'll never happen. And the prophet is adamant that if you don't change course, something bad's going to happen. It's even similar to a father and a son. The father's been around the block. He knows some things. He warns the kid, hey, don't do this, steer clear of that, watch out for that guy. But the kid doesn't take him seriously. But what the child doesn't know is that the father's looking downstream at threats that the kid can't see yet. So I feel it's the same way with our country, and the media keeps us ignorant and stupid. And I'm hoping more and more people see the threats, and that Trump is actually looking forward and trying to unwind some problems that if we don't address, even if it's going to cause us a little bit of pain short term, the status quo is unsustainable. So that's my reason for wanting to talk about this. Do a little history lesson. There's a concept called Thucydides' trap. Thucydides was a Greek historian, and he was looking at the Peloponnesian War and what led to it. And he arrived at a conclusion that whenever you have an ascending power and an established power, there's usually going to be a conflict. And that was what happened between Athens and Sparta. And then there was a professor I think he's from University of Chicago, called Graham Allison, who took that and applied it to other dynamics in world history, where you had a rising power threatening an existing power. And in a majority of instances, when that happened, it led to a conflict, a war. So he got a lot of notoriety for applying that to what was going on between China and the United States. One key difference, though, in how the Chinese have ascended is they've corrupted and captured the elite in our society. The elite, I use, quotation marks. The political leaders, academic leaders, Hollywood, and we're going to kind of talk about how they've gone about doing that. I was reading the Bible the other day, and when the Bible talks about a nation, it's actually descendants from a patriarch. Like the nation of Israel is descendants of Israel. The Canaanites are descendant of Canaan. The Amalekites are descendant of Amalek, and on and on and on. And what does the leader of a nation want for his family but for them to thrive and do well, right? Want them to have a lot of children, want them to be able to have upward mobility, good careers, fulfilled. So that's what the leader of our nation should want the people to have. But the leaders of our nation oftentimes were only interested in their own self-interest, and it's led to people being unable to afford even having children. People are sick, overweight, diseased. People are addicted to drugs and alcohol and fentanyl and other opiates that we're going to talk about. So I don't think our nation's leaders have been actually being leaders of nations as they should be, having foresight and care for their people, for their family. And that's what we should expect from our leaders. I want to do another little history lesson on something called the Opium Wars. And so this is back when we had the British Empire, and they were flooding China with opium. And the leaders of China, who actually cared for their people like a good nation leader should, resented that, and they hated that, and they saw their people were getting addicted to it. So they had a conflict, and it led to China being kind of weakened for a long period of time. And ultimately, Mao took charge with the Communist Party after the Second World War, and that is still the government, essentially, that carries on today. And unlike our leaders and our population, they have a long memory. And it is no accident that what is happening at our border, and has happening for a long time, I mean, it's only now starting to get reported more and more because Trump has made it an issue, is the amount of fentanyl coming across the border that's killing our youth. And people don't understand. They think this is like just junkies dying, and not to say that would be of any less worth. They're human beings made in the image of God. We should care about them. But this is stuff that's getting mixed into recreational drugs or actual legitimate drugs that people use for various things. Young, healthy people are dying, and they're gutting our society. I mean, you can only sustain losing so many young people, whether you're losing them, and we'll talk about it later, to a mental illness like trans ideology or to a drug overdose like with fentanyl. It's gutting us. And we could all think that these things are just accidental, but this is a reversal of the opium wars. It's the exact same thing. I just hope our leaders actually care enough about the people to stop it. I think we have leadership now that actually cares. But there's still so many parts of the apparatus, including the media, that is refusing to let the truth get out there so we could actually solve the problem. Does anyone remember the spy balloon flying over our nation for several days? I mean, is that an act of war? I mean, it's not a secret that the Chinese are buying farmland near many of our military installations in this country. Is anyone looking to stop that? It's been widely reported that many Chinese nationals have been crossing our border under the Biden administration. These are young men. What are they doing here? We talked about it before, that the Chinese citizens are actually agents of the state. You could look up very quickly all the professors in academia that have been colluding with the Chinese and have been selling secrets. Some have been charged, not nearly enough. So let's go back to the book now, Unrestricted Warfare. What are the types of warfare that are outlined in the book? And then it's not complicated. I mean, and none of this is like hard to find. You could find it, and people have been talking about it, just not enough. And because of that, most of the people don't understand we're actually at war with China, or they're at war with us at least. Not in a kinetic war sense yet, but certainly in this unrestricted warfare. So let's take a couple. Drug warfare is one of them. Okay, we just talked about that. Technological warfare. Okay, well, over the years, companies in the U.S. who have developed technology, and we are an engine of development of technology because of our free market system, and the people aren't repressed like they are in the Chinese Communist Party. We develop technology, and then because of greed, companies will make deals with the Chinese Communist Party. And what people understand about doing business in China, everyone in China is an agent of the state, of the party. So nothing's a secret. They're all essentially spies. And they steal the technology. They rip it off, and then they use it against us, or they sell against us. They put the company that developed the technology in the first place out of business. Fabrication warfare. Our inability to make anything is a weakness. You know, we can't ramp up to build planes and tanks and things that you need to defend your nation if everything that we make is made overseas. Furthermore, like we talked about in the tariff episode, those types of jobs are the jobs that matter as far as like what puts most people in an ability to move upward in society. Those are the high-paying jobs that allow people to form families and not just kind of eke out and barely make it and barely be able to pay off their credit cards. We don't need any more gigs. People shouldn't be making a career on Uber. They shouldn't. Ideally, they would have a 30, 40-year career with GE like my grandfather did, or Salerno Cookie Factory like my other grandfather did. But that's not available anymore. Resources warfare. So like people talk about rare earths. I mean, rare earths are everywhere. It's just who could process them, and we don't process them here. Okay, so on the resources front, most of our drugs, the essential ingredients in our drugs, come out of China. So if in the event we were in a conflict, what's to stop them from saying we're not sending that over to you anymore? They have us held hostage. And we allowed that to happen because we had weak, corrupt, immoral leaders that were profiting as they were selling the country out. Economic warfare. This is what the trade war is about. And it's not even a trade war. It's trying to rebalance a situation that's completely out of balance. You can't sustain the way we're going right now. Cyber warfare. Attacks on our electrical grid. They've been in and out of many of our high-level systems, getting classified information on various people working in the government. And honestly, they haven't been held to account. Now, we had COVID. Now, was that released intentionally? Let's look at the fact pattern. Even if it wasn't released intentionally, at first we were told that it was completely happened naturally, and if you suggested anything else, you're crazy. I think we've put that one to bed. It was released from a lab, and I think everyone's pretty much in agreement that it was man-made. It was created. It was through gain of function, is the term everyone uses. So that happened. Now, was it released intentionally or unintentionally? I don't know. The timing's kind of crazy. If you remember, during the first Trump administration, the economy was roaring. They were just about to sign an economic deal with the Chinese that Chinese ultimately walked away from last minute after putting a ton of work into it. And then this bug came out. And now it's come out that during military games that they had, and it had the whole world over there, including the United States, that it was already floating around. And all these things are things that we were told were not true. So let's say it just came out by accident. The hostile activity of the Chinese Communist Party should tell you what you need to know about them, that they're at war. They were withholding PPE. They weren't telling people the truth. They weren't releasing information. They weren't being good actors in the whole dance. So if you think that was accidental, you're entitled to. Even if it was accidental, they didn't cooperate with the rest of the world in the way they should have if they were genuinely looking to save people's lives. But you have to understand, it's an atheistic society. It's a godless society. It's all about power. Human life doesn't have value. The Chinese Communist Party regime has killed more people than the Nazis. And we're doing business with them day and night. And no one's talking about it. No one cares. Cultural psychological warfare. Look how they have infiltrated themselves into our universities. And look at the cultural poison that they've been spewing out of the universities. They have social media platforms where they spew psychological poison into our society that they don't allow in theirs. You know, the stuff coming out of Hollywood, too, is by no accident. Demoralizing our society, making us unproud to be Americans, making us ashamed of our history, of our culture, of our values. No nation's perfect. A lot of bad things have been done, but to say that we haven't liberated a ton of people and been a model of freedom and democracy. But what has really happened here? You know, we were supposed to make the rest of the world want to be more like us. And if we did business with China, the Chinese would become more like us. That hasn't happened. What's actually happened is we've become a lot more like the Chinese Communist Party. The amount of people that are fine with being ruled by one party, look at the state of Illinois, the state of New York, the state of California, complete basket cases and one party rule, no dissent. So I wanted to just give you a few examples of these things happening. You could look them up for yourself. You could look up the book for yourself. I mean, when the Chinese put out a book saying this is how we're going to go to war with this nation, and then you see examples of that going on, and then you deny that any of those things are an act of war. I don't know how much clearer it has to be. So, do we want to go to a shooting war? Of course not. Nobody wants to do that. But we have to deal with the warfare coming at us. So, share it with your friends. Try to enlighten them a little bit. Have them do their research. Look at it. None of this is hidden. It's all in plain sight. The fact that the media doesn't talk about it is tragic. And these are things that just come up now, but they've been circulating. I've been hearing people talking about these issues for 15, 20 years, and everyone's been asleep at the switch. We're 30-something trillion in debt, and we're so weak. Our electrical grid is weak. Our infrastructure is weak. We don't make anything anymore. We don't have the ability to make the essential drugs. Now we're bringing over the chip manufacturing plants. Why weren't those here in the first place? Why are we reliant? Our entire economy, you know what would happen if the Chinese moved in on Taiwan and those chips couldn't make it here? Do you realize how much your life would change? Everything you do every day is affected by those chips. But, you know, what are we screaming about? I don't know. Go to one of these rallies and see what the people are screaming about. I don't even know if they know what they're screaming about. They're being lied to, and we need to help them. So, thanks for joining. Share the episode. Talk to you soon.
Sing it!
Thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope I got you thinking and out of your comfort zone. Believe me, the biggest fear your government has is a population that is thinking and talking to one another. So get out there, take a risk, start a conversation, make a friend, and reason with each other. Share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. I wish you peace and love.